Well, hey, it's a college football algorithm review. It's one of the two algorithms I'm working a lot on right now here in September, NFL and college football. So we have the first week of results since I broke this thing out. Last time I worked on this was 2019, everybody. We are 4 years later, and I'm actually putting forth the effort to really dig into this and try to make this thing work. I did watch college football for the first time ever this weekend. I watched them. I can see what all the hubbub and excitement is about. I watched some of the Colorado game against Nebraska. I have experience in both of those states. Boulder is my favorite city in between the Mississippi River and Las Vegas, I would say, right in between those two areas. Uh, Boulder's incredible. I felt like I was there, the sun and the mountains in the background, just streaming through the television. I actually did feel like I was in Boulder watching this game. And Deion Sanders coaching them prime time, winning games. At least the algorithm got this one right because I actually did bet that game and got that right. But overall, it's still very, 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 very choppy. And that's to be expected. So I'm showing a 29-18 win percentage here. I'm seeing, like, we're just going to gloss over this because there's a lot of games in here, right? And I've spent a good amount of time on this, so I've really prepared for this video, what I want to tell you. But understand that we are going to go through some hurdles here in the beginning, and I really wouldn't count on this working right throughout most of this month of September but it will probably get better and better each week, and we'll learn something each week. Now, so we want to look top down by projected margin of victory. Like, these are the important things that I'm looking at. I'm not concerned about spread because I don't want to worry about the spread. Nobody beats the spread. Like, nobody beats the spread consistently. Nobody does. So why even worry about it? Worry about winners. It's more authentic. It's more what about the algorithm, like what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to show the most lopsided matchups at the top of the list by projected margin of victory. So we should see a big, huge stream of wins coming down the top of this sheet. We have 13 wins in a row, but that's only 13 out of 47. It means that we're winning the top 25% of the games about. We caught wins, and then we started to have some problems. And we had some problems with a huge thing like an underdog here. And so I was like, all right, well, what is happening? Because you need to have more than just the top 25% of your teams win. Or at least you see, we don't have a string of wins here. We've got a bunch of losses. Like, this is not, anytime it starts to look like a barber pole, I always say barber pole syndrome, that's when you know your algorithm is not working. Barber pole is going to be alternating colors of win, loss, win, loss. Like, this is all terrible. I would say everything down here is terrible. And that the only cutoff where things were good was a projected margin of victory of more than 2.5 touchdowns, of 19 points or more is the only place where we were actually doing the right thing. That's clearly not good enough. So why is it doing that? Why aren't we getting more wins up top? Well, the first thing I noticed from watching college football and doing the research on what's happening here is that you have conference and non-conference games, and that makes all the difference. Because if you see the way the standings are recorded here, when you play a team that's out of your conference, and I have them listed in the schedule here, I supposedly have applied the correct conferences here to the teams. And you can see one of them is in green and one of them is black. And the green one is the top conference league, sort of, meaning if they're playing in I guess the league where they could go to one of the bowl games or something, one of the bowl games we thought of, they have to be probably playing in this conference. And if they're D1 AA, that's like a lower tier. It's like AA instead of single A, which is, or the top A league. So this is like a secondary league. And some of these teams in this secondary league of their designation, if I have them all right, and I am not sure that I have them all right, so that's the other thing, is I need to continue to research to make sure they are correct. They're not as strong. Like teams like Delaware and Duquesne, like they're not Division 1A programs, I guess. Florida A&M, Fordham, Furman, Grambling State. Like, you're never going to see Grambling State in the Sun Bowl or something because they're not in the conference. Anyway, so because teams are playing out of conference, the scores get super distorted in a lot of these games. One team just crushes it. Yeah, teams put up 50, 60, 80 points. So that absolutely matters, because beating up on a team that's not even in your conference is not something that you should be as proud of as when you beat up on a team that is in your conference. Like, these games should mean more. These look more like NFL scores at 27-21 and not like Bush League scores at 59-3. So that is distorting our scoring data 100%. So things I'm thinking of doing as we get more stats in is, one, just looking at conference points and conference scores. So separating and segregating out the conference games versus non-conference games completely in the stat structure. That's probably a great idea. And then also only assessing conference versus conference games, which means we would not even look at these games, even though they have lines. And so I kind of don't want to ignore them, but we could just care about games that are like this. Games that are Madison versus Virginia, which was an excellent game, by the way, that had tremendous amount of scoring and Madison barely winning. Stuff like that would be the only things that we want to have the algorithm predict, because it's not set up to work with non-conference games. That's probably the healthiest way to handle this, both in terms of workload as well as just streamlining of stats. So I'm going to look into that as I import this week's stats and spend extensive and expensive time working with this file for this week, because this is really where I need to I think, circulate my attention right now. So I wanted to glance over it. I wanted to say, like, let's take a couple other looks at this, not just by projected a margin of victory, even though I think it is going to yield exactly what I'm guessing, which is, for example, let's sort this by money line descending, meaning the best odds games that we said to play. And the reason why I'm going to do this was I want to show you the financial impact. So we had all these crazy underdogs up here. Like, look at this. We had Southern Mississippi, UNLV over Michigan. I was playing poker actually this weekend, and I was sitting next to a guy with a Michigan like football shirt on or something, and he knew his football. And I was gonna tell him about the algorithm, and then I realized, I was like, wait a minute, the algorithm has UNLV beating Michigan in Michigan. That sounds like the dumbest AI you could possibly create. And I didn't mention it to him because I knew this offhand, because I have been to Michigan. I have a rollerblading video where I rollerbladed up during a Michigan game. For some reason, I ended up rollerblading all the way up the hill to the stadium while like thousands and thousands of cheerleaders were coming out of the stadium for some reason. So it's me videotaping like 2,000 cheerleaders weaving through them up a hill. That was the time I was in Michigan. They care about their football and they win games. This is obviously ridiculous, and the odds makers know it at plus 2,000. So what on earth happened here? And I'll tell you what happened here. In week 1 or week 2, or the first time that UNLV played, they played another like non-conference team, right? And they probably won against a different bad team. Let's see. This was week 3. What about week 2? Oh yeah, we need to unfilter the week for a second. So we unfilter the week and we search for the team here. And we can see that they beat Bryant, who is not a conference team, 44-14. Okay, well, Bryant is not a good football team. That's what we learned. It doesn't mean UNLV has 44 points in them every week. Michigan is still Michigan. So, well, what happens? If we had removed non-conference points results from our list, well, guess what? We would not have had anything on UNLV at all, because they wouldn't have had any stats yet. So we were foregoing any stats for bad stats, essentially. It is obvious that conference games and conference stats are all we should care about. I don't know how to remove conference games from the standings. And we're probably going to have to get a different source for this. So I will search around and try to find conference-only points, average points in conference games, all that stuff. That is all we're going to care about. What that's going to do is create a narrower data set of games that we are using. Okay. So we're going to, because we are going to ignore all non-conference games. But even with that limited database, we're not going to get skewed data, and it's never going to do something like this. It's never, because now UNLV's results are much, much worse because they got annihilated. How bad? Michigan won this game. No, Michigan won this by more than 21-0. I think my score is wrong. Hold on a second. Let's ask people or somebody. Michigan versus UNLV college football score.
According to CBS Sports, the Wolverines had no problems against UNLV in a 35-7 victory, the second straight without coach Jim Harbaugh as he serves a 3-game self-imposed suspension to start the year.
Did you really? Self-imposed suspension? Can you even call that a suspension? What is that all about? Thanks for the news, Google. He probably got suspended for betting. It's UNLV, right? I don't know the answer to that. Wait, who does Harbaugh coach? Oh, sorry. Yeah, Harbaugh coaches Michigan. Okay. I don't know what he did. All right. Well, I just fixed that score. I hope all our other scores are right. They might not be. I think I was keeping scores in the middle of the day and then forgot to revisit that. Oh gosh, really? Is that what happened? I'm not even going to worry about it and check over all those scores right now. But what we'll do is we'll understand that what we've learned from this week is that non-conference games are polluting our data, and I'm going to find out a way to remove them. So I'm coming back with predictions for week 4 that do not include any non-conference game stats. If I have any source where I can remove them, it's going to limit our prediction capability because we are not going to have a lot of games, and only teams that have played conference games are going to show up with any prediction, I believe. But I feel like that's the way going forward. And given that there's so many games in here anyway every week, I'm okay with that. I think those big games, even though every game was on television, I've never seen anything like this, where when you have a basic cable subscription, it was every other channel had one of these games on. I could not believe how much college football is televised. And that's fascinating and somewhat helpful, but it does own your Saturday. And certainly I'm not going to have every Saturday to dedicate to watching college football, but I will spend some heavy focus here this month of September, just to get this thing rolling and understanding that we can trust what it's kicking out. So removing conference games is definitely a huge start. And I really like to see what it shows without any non-conference game data, because I suspect it would be a lot more reasonable. All right. So that's the update. I will be working hard. I'll see what I can get ready for what is called week 3 or week 4 of the season. We have our numbering a little off because we included a very short week 1. Technically week 2 is week 1 and week 3 is week 2. So they're calling it week 3 right now, even though we're calling it week 4. Okay, we're calling this week 4 right now. And it starts off with some Thursday night games, one of which is a non-conference game, but this is a conference game of Navy versus Memphis. What is this doing? I don't know yet. I don't even want to get into these predictions yet because the file's not ready and I haven't imported the results from last week even in here yet. All right. So understand college football is a work in process. It's still $100 for the rest of the month, but keep in mind what I'm trying to give you for that $100 after this is all over is a file in the last week of September that is reasonable enough that it's easier to maintain. There's a source for conference versus non-conference stats that we are using. And it's still, it's more reliable, more predictable, and you feel confident when looking at it, as opposed to right now, where I don't know how you can feel confident looking. I know you can't feel confident looking at this. So even when we're doing descending by projected margin of victory, which is what we're going to use, you can't feel confident with this level of disaster in here. I mean, if we hit the first 13 games and we only won 29, like we only won 16 games out of the last 34. I mean, that's just barely 50%. It's nothing. So clearly the adjustments need to be made, but I think they will be productive once we get conference stats only. So that's my update. I'll be working on it, and I'll decide what I don't know what I'm going to do for a video this week. We may find out that there are not enough matchups with teams that have played any conference versus conference games yet, so that our projections for week 3 are going to be very, very limited. It's worth a video though. I will do a college football prediction video that's public this week, just to explain the process and where we've gotten. It may not be before Thursday's games, but it might be. I don't know yet. So we'll just keep an eye out for that. All right. Good luck, everybody. May all your picks be winning.